to this celebration of Micheline Maylor's incredible book, The Bad Wife, which I have been carrying around and enjoying for the weeks that I've had it. Yeah, as Kyle was saying, we have just a 1 hour celebration tonight, and it's going to end very abruptly. So I hope you stay for the whole thing. What we've got in store is a reading by Matt Sutton and Tyler Engstrom. And I'm going to introduce Micheline, and then Micheline is going to read for a while, and then we'll have a Q&A. So think about any questions that you might have and put them in the Q&A, and then I can read them to Micheline. So let's just start, shall we? Can I introduce, first of all, Tyler Engstrom? You ready to go, Tyler?
Ready to go.
Okay, so Tyler Engstrom was a 2017 finalist for Writers Trust RBC Bromden Wallace Award for Emerging Writers. His poems have most recently been featured in the anthology Drifting Like a Metaphor, Calgary Poets of Promise, which was put out by Micheline's press, Frontenac Press. He currently lives in Calgary. Please help me welcome Tyler Engstrom.
Yeah, first off, just congratulations, Micheline. Awesome. I'm very excited to get the book. And thanks to, Shelf Life and, John for hosting. And yeah, this is great. Very excited. So I'm going to read two poems. The first one is On My Way Home from the Corner Store. Today is particularly like any other day. On my way home, I passed by a wedding in the park. The bride was crying and the groom looked like he'd been mauled by a bear. His face was a mess, a prize fighter who'd lost and was quickly on his way to train the next generation of prize fighters. Those who cannot do, teach. Something like that. I kept walking and found a man at the edge of a bridge. What are you doing up there? I asked. I plan to jump and see what the world will make of it, he said. It was a footbridge, maybe 6 feet off the ground, but I suppose we all start somewhere and eventually end up in the same place. It was a beautiful day anyway. I passed by an old dog, surely held up by only the concrete beneath it, and threw it half of the sandwich I'd been keeping in my pocket, to which it said, "If you're the only person I meet today, it will have been enough." This felt nice, but a dying dog is a dying dog. I kept thinking on my way home to tell this story, how everything was as it seems. I don't feel like I've done anything justice. Even the flowers were plain in a way I couldn't describe. There's supposed to be some beauty to it all, isn't there? Aren't I supposed to put words to the greenness of every leaf and the way the grass waves you in every direction but home? The only God that poets have wanted to fuck a tree. Wasn't this all supposed to mean something? And the next one I have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to read one called The Infantry. I laid down in front of a tank, an immovable object in the face of the world. The military museum curator asked me to move on and make room. I got up, dusted myself off, and thought about how I wasn't there when my mother died. Of course, she's still alive, so how could I be? But I'm as sure of the future as anyone. Thanks. I see the snaps.
That was snap. Are you hearing the snaps? The virtual.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I sense the snaps.
International snaps.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tyler. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Matt, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. Matt Sutton is a 29-year-old poet who has published work in a number of other mediums. He is finishing a manuscript of confessional works about his wild life. Please help me welcome Matt Sutton.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat Tyler too much, but John, thank you. I loved The Mean Game. I read it last year. Micheline, I bought The Bad Wife on Tuesday. I thought I should have it before this, and I haven't put it down yet. So thank you for having me here. I'm really excited. The first poem I'm going to read is called Every Day is a Demon, and I just wait for him to leave. I've been given more than I deserve. Countless wasted days, bacon, eggs, and vodka orange juice. He says I can be a little indulgent. I can't hear past my gagging in a perfectly hot shower, puking on my wet, naked feet. Was it worth it? The answer is always yes when I stir suddenly, sweating, swearing. Morning brings the pain to swollen eyes, body beaten by the boots of a million mistakes. I've tried every possible way to make the night last a little longer, but I can't win against the sun. The next poem, I've got enough dead friends to have my own graveyard. It's cheerful for you, Micheline. I'd put it in my backyard with a nice grill and maybe one of those outdoor bars. Get a heated infinity pool or something I could call symbolic but have fun with at the same time. Pour a cocktail and float to remember them. I think they'd appreciate that. They left without saying goodbye. Suicide and drugs and suicide by drugs. No what ifs or wait a minute, second thoughts or chances or conversations. Sometimes they visit my dreams, lay in my bed and tell me they're happier now. I hold on to them and don't ask questions. Say I don't blame them. I've wanted to go a few times too. Maybe they're what's keeping me around. If I had the chance to go back and save them, I wouldn't, and it makes me feel guilty. I don't think they'd want me to. Sometimes people have to go so we can all keep going, even if it's all of a sudden or accidental. Not because everything happens for a reason, but maybe the opposite. Nothing happens for any reason or makes any fucking sense, but that's okay. If it did, we'd never have any fun, and I'd never have a pool with an outdoor bar.
Thanks, Matt. That was amazing. Matt, did I meet you at Micheline's house when I was there in 2019?
Yeah, that's right. I was there.
It's coming back to me. Yeah, yeah. Oh, those are amazing poems. Tyler, did we meet as well? Yeah, yeah, of course. Anyway, good to see y'all again. Amazing reading, guys. All right. Are we ready for the main event of the evening? Micheline, though, you have to brace yourself because I got to introduce you, okay?
Okay, I'll brace myself.
Brace yourself. Okay. So we're all here for one reason, and that's to celebrate this really cool book. So let me say a few words about it. And I have to say, as I introduce this book, that it's a little bit hard for me to separate the talking about this book from talking about Micheline, the person. And for those of you who know Micheline, you might have a similar experience. So just to say something about that, Micheline is a friend of mine. We met at the Banff Center in 2010, and we stayed in pretty close contact since then. Micheline is, for those of you who know her, she's honest and smart and talented and down to earth and just as cool as hell. I stayed with Micheline and Jeff in Canmore in 2019 when I was on my little tour. She was an extremely generous host, and she arranged workshops for me, readings, and maybe the most comfortable bed that I've ever slept on in my entire life. I still think of that bed with a kind of jealousy and covetousness.
We can come back.
I am leading to this book very slowly. So when I was in Canmore and staying with Micheline, we had these amazing talks in her living room over a couple of days. They were just these luxurious, wonderful talks over breakfast, over coffees, over wine. Over this time, she said that she had a new manuscript, and I got a little nosy and I said, can I have a look at this new manuscript? And sure enough, I got this wonderful, I think 80 pages plopped on my lap. And I read it, I devoured it. It was incredibly exciting. And over the next day or two, we handed it back and forth, and we talked about it. And they were poems about her last marriage. And there was a humility to them, and just incredible, like real visceral honesty to them. And they were heart-wrenching and just incredible. So and also this is where it gets a little difficult for me, because they seem to be kind of in the voice of the person who I was speaking to as well over the dinner table. But of course, it's never as simple as that, right? With every book, the poet has got a kind of a persona that they take on. And I think this is one of the genius qualities of Micheline, that she makes you feel in her poems as if you're sitting across a table from her. Like you feel as if you're talking to a close friend, for even those of you who are not close friends with Micheline, I feel like her poems give off this vibe of that she's telling you a secret, and that you're confidants, and that you trust her, and that she trusts you. So these are poems, I think, that are able to disarm us and give us the sense that they're telling us secrets. So I think Micheline, she speaks the truth in this book. And it's not just about others, but it's about herself. The Bad Wife is, and this is maybe something we can get into in the Q&A, but I think of them as confessional poems. And I mean this in the best possible sense. Maybe the closest facsimile that I could think of when I was reading this book was Sharon Olds' Stag's Leap, which is about her failed marriage. And it's just, for those of you who know it, I highly recommend it. It's a real like knife in the heart, incredible, incredible book, as Micheline's book is. That emotional clarity and the willingness to step into the lens and not exempt herself from these witheringly honest enactments. And as readers, we're thankful for this. And we can tell when we're being lied to, and we can tell when we're not. And it's a gift when we're not. So before I turn it over to Micheline, I'm gonna make her cringe even more and read one of the poems, which is one of my favorites. For those of you who have the book, it's on page 7. It's called Your Motto. And it starts with an epigraph attributed to John Wayne. I told you once I love you. If anything changes, I'll let you know. I couldn't stay faithful after New Year's Eve. All those aggressive philosophy majors and tequila shots. You and me sat, the stuffed bears in our son's room, propped up in corners, staring, neglected, a bit dusty. What was to be done after that party? All my switches flipped, a fuse box shutting down, click by click. Time to wrap it up, kids. Last call, last song. And I'm sitting here in my corner now, hearing you say, what did you want me to do? Punch the guy? No, no, no. I wanted you to love me so hard that he didn't have space to demand I go home with him. I wanted you to love me, but you were too busy laughing. It's like it's like a knife in the heart, isn't it? These poems, they're just amazing. So I'm going to end very quickly now and turn it over to Micheline. I'll just say her basic bio here. Her bio, as I'm sure most of you who know her know, it's about her community so much. I think Micheline gives so much to her community and to the people around her. She was a poet laureate of Calgary from 2016 to 18. She was Calgary Public Library author in residence in the fall 2016. She teaches creative writing and composition at Mount Royal University in Calgary, where it will not surprise any of us to learn she won the 2018 Distinguished Teaching Award. She's the poetry editor at Frontenac House and the co-founder of Free Fall Literary Society. Please help me welcome the powerhouse, Micheline Maylor.
Okay. That's enough. I like snapping for myself because it's out of habit. And it's like, it's not really for myself, it's just habit. Okay, there's a couple of people that I want to thank before I begin, because after I begin, I don't want to break the spell for a little while, okay? So John and I did have those amazing conversations, and it's very important that we have these literary friends and literary mentors when we're moving through our journeys of telling story through poem, telling story at all. And John is definitely one of my closest friends in that regard. I want to thank a couple of other people who really matter. I can't tell who's here because I can only see 1 page out of 5. So if George Eliot Clark is here, I want to thank George Eliot Clark because I handed him the largest mess humanly possible and said, is this a book? It was a bunch of papers in a laundry basket, and he sorted it out. So I really want to thank George Eliot Clark. I also want to thank Bruce Hunter because he and I had conversations back and forth, and Bruce came up with the title for me. He's like, that's the title of this book. Listen to me, damn it. And he was right. So thank you, Bruce, for that. I also want to thank the little phenom named Anna Wyant, who is the artist of this particular cover art. She is a fantastic up and coming painter in New York City. And she was so generous to me because I mean, she's sells her stuff for $15,000 a painting. And she just said, yeah, sure, use it, Micheline. Like, what a generous, loving thing. I see a lot of loving faces here from my writing groups, from my friendship groups, from my work, from all kinds of different places. And I just want to thank you all for being here and sharing with me your loving kindness. I have to tell you that I'm going to start reading, and this book, it even in places gets a little hard for me to read. So if I lose it or get a little bit stuttery, forgive me. Okay. How to become a bad wife. Start with the archetype of innocence. Start as the lawful good. Let the kraken dice fall on good favor. Start with a long white sundress, strappy sandals, and bring a puppy. Flirt. Look wide-eyed at the world with brown swirling fingers, point at dreams and purple mountain bluebells. Use brown sugar in your coffee, sweeten everything. Once you are sure you are being followed by the man, let the tan of your ankles show. Hide the barnyards of your life in the hem of your skirt. Daub the light pink eyeshadow from Shoppers Drug Mart in the corner of your lids. Appear fresh. You must look good to make the effects really last before you turn dark. Turn dark after the vows. Wait until the firstborn and the secondborn. Secure your sweetness in their DNA. Then experience the rock slide of your own heart. Skiff across doubt's surface. Slide slowly, gather dirt and wounds. Stay calm and frightening, a temple guardian of the heart. Envision lizards running over water. Panic at your own life. Find yourself someone to talk to. A nice professor much older than you. Always safe. Go somewhere with coffee. Be sure the children are with the babysitter. Start sinking, not skimming. Become an unreliable narrator. Find danger as water invades your ears, sunlight loyal above you. See the patterns on the surface ripple and shake. Here is the diaphanous. Find yourself drowned. Utter your own epitaph from under the sea. Here lies the bad wife. In the year of that separating, it seemed to me that dead birds were arriving more often than they should. And this one is titled, The Crow Takes the Body. I take the body from the cold, wet slate stones, from under the eaves, from under the neck break window, from under the sill, from under the bushes and the wilted mint. I take the body to the high grass beside the small red bush, long branched in the long, long grass beside the wilting wildflowers. Offer up for scavengers the beautiful body to magpie to crow. The crow sees the body first, curls in, glides a circle, an eye circle, a wind circle. The circle crow takes the robin who dies by the window. And on camera where I shoot the last gulping breaths, contracting legs and heart, I shoot them in my camera until two convulsions make a death out of a life, and I watch my camera witnessing the last of this little mottled heart. And the body stays on the slate, on the wet stone, and I offer her to the high grass, to the red brush, and the crow comes on time. The undertaker arrives too late, and the crow takes the body into its beak, takes the weight, bows to the sky, gives thanks, I think, lifts her into the nearest trees and fogs, and sits down solemn and bows to the body, the offering from the window and the grass and me. Scrapbook. I cut our sex life out of a memory for the scrapbook. The results were mediocre. I prefer the corner where I collaged the green convertible into the backcountry road on that September evening. I must have been drunk. I remember rummaging the glove box for map or income tax or oracle, an ace of swords for cutting clean. You disappear from my dreams, one woken sunflake at a time. I kill you with my forgetting. It is our best shot at taking each other for granted one last time. Our daughter suggests we try to get along. I have no quarrel with you or standing in the same room. It's complicated. Optimism and pessimism grumble at odds with complacency. You don't return my texts. This sentence lacks imagery. I watch the weeds flare after the August rainstorm, little cheering fans at the rock concert with their cell phone flashlights glittering. The sky smudges pus gray. I wonder about the free will of clouds, how they shapeshift right out of their own selves before scudding off into oblivion. And this one's titled The Sleep. Sorry, my phone is making noise, so I stuffed it under the couch cushion. The Sleep. In this radical edit, I walk out of an elegy carrying a haiku. I look for a glimpse of my married life somewhere between REM and dawn. I have no argument with you. This is irony. The forever dream house renamed itself the Albatross. The children moan like bagpipes until they stop. The dead winter rabbit silently stank up the spring lilacs, its rotten carcass upended on your shovel, and then all of my things. Even the locket on my bracelet needed to be rekeyed. The neighbor said, "You're good together." I disagreed. The front porch drunks wanted a happy ending. Honestly, no one tells a good bedtime story anymore. Okay, and then this one, Never Thought. I've been having home wreck dreams of you. I've got an inside view from our big window. This is a metaphor, of course, not manufactured yet. We stay shrouded in a cloud of disaster. Dust in the loader bucket, the ideal view ruins itself. This dream, all I could pull out of the dark. A toothy wild punk drunk at the controls. I get ornery when unprotected. I am the wife at the party, guarded by friends' husbands who have more vigilant shoulders. Some big bully wants me for his own. You have such lovely smiling dimples when you watch. And over there in the corner, you eye the trespasser. He drives right into your marriage and you watch. The danger of Georgian guest houses. We flew into Kansas for Maker's Mark and local draft. The man in the bar plays Muddy Waters for silver and paper tips for cattle drives. The shower is strong, hot, and orgasmic. The organic restaurant blackens fish near the antique place with buckets of dolls' heads, old card catalogs turned into wine racks and smoke spits as we drive into Missouri. Tiredness makes bones crisp. The Georgian guest house gives oranges and fried eggs for breakfast. We roam the king-size bed with maroon sheets. Glass rabbits watch, and I wonder what to hold in my palm. I cut my leg shaving, the nick bleeds, the sheets say nothing to the landlord. We have the last best sex. On all fours, I thank the footboard. It's quite an operation running that body of land, that inn. We walk past the algae pond into red October turned bushes. Autumn rolls in a lamb and sleeps into winter, waiting for the slow motion exit I start to make. There's a picture of me in a gray jacket against a brick wall. Above, the sky says nothing. It's almost all shade. Thanks. And this one for you poetry geeks is a villanelle. Okay. The Pine Siskin. Last week, I drew rebirth from my druid deck. Then came a small funk at the front window, a small wreck, a little plunk, snow still thick in the garden, vanishing spring's magic trick. I drank of my warm coffee in cool silence, searching for something else, a life hack, an inside yearning, a witchy tarot pack. The siskin flew straight, an unnoticed fellow delivering a gooey, esoteric message. Take a closer look somewhere near the back of your mind. The path you seek leads somehow to satisfaction if you look. Optimistic and thick in the head, I focused on the black rabbit, the fucker in the art of the card, and the mellow light of the room, not the imminent smack of a tiny life dropping to death. A fresh wreck at my door. Today the pine siskin stays fallow in the yard, loosing feathers to the wind and rock where I laid him. A meal for friends, raven and rook. Okay. You okay over there? Keep going? Okay. Okay. If you have children, plug their ears. It's about the bad wife's vulva. The bad wife's vulva. Fallow as a nature reserve lined with bamboo sticks and the Latin names of fauna, rickety warnings to stay away from the habit restoration area. Turn eggs tucked in the verdant brush and the slim ovary of the seawall. The bad wife's vulva opens out, a rusty door after open sesame on Christmas and birthdays, and sometimes in the car under exciting fingers, and sometimes after drinks or after the shops or after a phlegmy cough, and sometimes when the dog is watching, and sometimes not at all. And this one, for you poetry geeks, is called a pantoum. A pantoum for the poetry geeks out there. Guilt. Guilt. I left her, the dog, when I bereaved my husband and became a nomad. This is not an excuse. It is an explanation for why the ants have morphed into red miniature bull terriers on the garden path. Because I am a nomad, this is now an excuse for letting go, unclamping my unhinged life, while an unhinged bull terrier on the garden path gnaws at a tiny bone from the past life pet shop. Let go, repeat the misunderstood, unhinge a life after a prize fight. Don't return to the ring. Unleash the bull terrier on the garden path. I left her, the dog, when I bereaved myself. I have 3 more, and then we can start. If you have any questions, just let Johnny know. He's going to field the questions at the end. This one is titled, So Say I. Say I will, say I do, dooby-dooby-dooby-doo. Say seashell, say ambergris, say wibbledy-bobble, say Chablis. Say French blues, say skinnamarink-dinky-doo, I love you. Say verdigris, say university, say Auburn, say Whipple, I'm not a saint. Say dipshit, say mistake, say I tried, say you give up. Say whatever you need to say to move on. Say excuse, say weariness, say something hard to swallow. Say a prayer to your atheist friend. Say Windex and never see clearly again. Say morning, say take it back. Would I take it back? Say I take it back. Would you take me back? Say handshake, say lawyer, say sign right here on the flagged lines. Say bed sheet, say ticking, say time bomb, say bourbon. Say my name on the cusp of a fiery swill. Say swing set, say tree stump, say sunset. Say it like you mean it. Oh, I meant it when I said it. And this one is titled Double Fisting. I'm thinking this afternoon of my grand slam substance abuse of the children, two shivering sticks in the autumn lake up to their necks in the current. I've got something in my left hand, something in my right fist. Liquor, drugs, disillusionment. Does it matter what substance I hold tight? This is, after all, the diary of a bad wife throwing it all to the wall, imitating a Greek wedding, an opa of the heart. Sometimes an ego death needs a little help. Oh, it was so easy not being sorry. Okay, last one. Inclement weather. Have you seen the sky turn on a rocky cliff face? Cobalt silk morph into a dappled gray hide? Seen the sky muddle beyond metaphor? Remember, I loved you spectacularly. From the time I spied you mowing the lawn in your underwear to another time, your body slipped in the air, turned and sprung off the edge of our vacation boat, backflips for the children, circus tricks, turns of impatience and longing, while ours sat across peaceful and inhabited rooms. CBC in the speakers droning the news almost the same as yesterday. So samey is the turning of the world, so full of human nature churning. These days smutched to years spread soft and grass green. Let's not forget, none of it was a waste. Let's not forget the mercury moodiness of weather over the slim sliced schist jammed along inside the continent. Our marriage was here for the millennia of our lives. It too has a drift, a motion told in geologic time, a fault line. I've felt the color of your mood in my breast, the way you despise me now, trample down the highway and punch hooves in my chest. But I have not forgotten your beauty, or the lilies you found at Safeway late on Mother's Day, or the sun-bleached Celtic glacial tint of your eyes. The talks we hushed in the bathroom, private and loving, where our children slept in night-dimmed rooms, hallways away. Safe then from me, from us. There is much to mourn, maybe even more to say, but now silence needs the length of time, the forge of memory. I have not forgotten the way the clouds here scud off mountaintops and shift a whole sky the same way tides scramble oceans. You will never be wrong in our children's DNA. We will have all of time to sit in those cells patiently together, all of the stories of our past still in synchronicity. Let those remembrances be balm enough for what has become of our bombed out home, empty of my things and the rhythms we kept. Tell your son you loved me. Keep once inside. All the sky is still in motion. Did you see the weather shift? Even now, thunderheads might break into blue.
Woo! Micheline, can you hear the love through all the the dead Zoom silence.
Yeah.
I can feel it galloping across the countryside and landing right in my lap.
You're getting a lot of love in the chat. That was amazing, Micheline.
Yeah.
So I think we're very conscious not to commit Zoom fatigue on you here and like to absolutely drain everybody. So we're going to try to finish in like 15 minutes, but we have time for a Q&A. So I'm not sure if anybody has put questions in the chat, but it might be a good opportunity. And what an amazing opportunity to ask Micheline a couple of questions in this celebration of her book. Micheline, are you ready to field a question or two?
I am. And I just, before we start with the questions, I just want to thank Matt and Tyler for being here. You know, I stand on the shoulders of so many. I stand on the shoulders of so many, and I see these brilliant young men coming up with their books and their talents, and I cannot wait to see what they do in their lifetime.
Yay, Tyler and Matt. I mean, I think there's a lot of writers in the room. I see a few familiar faces for sure. Hi, Joan. Hi, Ariel.
There is a question.
I see a question there. I see a poetry geek question. Did the Pantoums and Villanelle originate in those forms, Micheline?
No, I mess with them because I am a creative disaster. So in their perfect form, the Villanelle and the Pantoum come from Italy, and they're particularly stacked in a certain way. But I mess with it a little bit and use some more, as we like to call it in my poetry class. And I see some people from my poetry class here, Dean Cordella, for example. We call them fuginess. So we mess with the fuginess. And the fuginess is the repeat structure of the phrasing that repeats throughout. I tried to make the whole book have a consistent thread. And so you'll notice fuginess throughout the entire book. You'll also notice like references to my past books within the book as well, because I love a good fuginess.
We don't use that word enough. Fuginess. And that was from by Lisa Richter, by the way. Micheline, I have a question. So can we talk just a tiny bit more about the confessional poetry idea? You wrote an article on this, I think, for Cool Inquirer recently, and I called you in my little blurb Canada's Anne Sexton, and I hope you see the respect in that. I love Anne Sexton. And some people use this as a kind of dismissive term, I think, as a reductive term, I think these days, confessional poetry, but I don't. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I respect what you're doing so much. But would you speak to that moniker and that term?
Yes. Okay. So with the confessional poets, what I supposed in that article was that confessional poetry was something that it was a feminist resistance sort of thing, where it was resisting the norms of the day. And what happened was the feminists like Anne Sexton and Sylvia Plath came along and they were like, we hate being a housewife. This is fucking stupid. And we're going to write about it. And we're going to complain about it. And we're going to do it with the eloquence of every intellectual man in academia. And they did it. And they did it. And they pushed and they pushed. And so, and what happens is that there were other confessionals too. I mean, there were male confessionals too, but they didn't really receive the attention that the female confessionals did, partially because they just weren't cracking any norms. There was no norms to crack. So that was my supposition about confessional poetry. Now, confessional poetry gets a bad rap because oftentimes when people begin writing poems, they say things that are confessional and it sounds like diary entries. So there's two ways to avoid that. One is understand your craft. And the second way is to understand that each poem, each element, despite its personal nature, has to extend itself outward so that there is a universal truth that's at hand. And I mean, I believe that most of you probably felt some sort of universal truth about breaking up with someone or having heartbreak or listening to that. Like, so that's the crack, that's the key that cracks it. It's not just about yourself. It is an extension of that universal truth in which confessional poetry becomes robust and correct and right.
Yeah, there's a sense, isn't there, that it's almost like diary entries or something like that. But the best work is not. And I do agree. Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton basically, to me, shoot whoever the other names are, John Berryman and Robert Lowell, out of the water. So those are the names that come up for me. But there's another. Yeah, sorry.
Well, in my article, I also said that, you know, Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton, when they sat down at the games table, they weren't messing around. They were like life or death. This matters. Like no other poet was willing to go there. So I think that that's another element that has to do with it, because they were not playing at the penny table.
Well,
they put it all on the line.
On that, Micheline, neither are you playing at the penny table, and I wonder if you have comments for the people here. Like, I just feel like you've taken something very, very dark from your life and you've made it into something beautiful. And I'm focusing on the confessional part, but the sound is also very striking. And what you've done, I think, with form and sound is quite wonderful here. So, like, do you want to comment on that? Like, do you have any advice for folks who are taking their dark material, the very dark psychic material that happened to you a ways back as well, and the process of making that into something so beautiful?
Yeah, it's exactly what, there's a Wordsworth quote that probably everybody that's a poet knows. And that Wordsworth quote is, poetry is emotion reflected through tranquility, right? It is filtered through tranquility. And so what happens is, once you have the emotion, it's very hard to craft it. You just end up with this vomitorium of disaster on your paper. And then what happens is that you have to let a little bit of time go by, and you have to think about, how do I say this with the maximum amount of elegance and music? Because that's what poetry is. It's elegance, music, and image, right? You know, this book could be summed up in a sentence. It could be sentenced, it could be one sentence. It could be, fuck that hurt, right? But that's not imagery. Like, what the poet's job then is to grab that imagery and that music and take that lump that's in front of them and form it. And was it easy? No. Did it take time? Yes. Did it take a lot of reflecting back and forth with my mentors and friends? Yes. And does that happen to every poet? Does that happen to every good poet? I would think so. I would hope so. Right? That's why we create community with one another, because our collective smarts and intelligence equal more than what we can do on our own.
Yeah, with that dark material, you want help, don't you? You want to have a village around you.
With any material.
Yeah. There's a few questions here. Do you remember the last poem that you read, Micheline?
I do.
So there's a question from Melvin. Did you write that last poem last?
Melvin, that was the first poem I wrote in the whole book. It was actually the first one. And I worked backward from there. Yeah.
But can I ask, what does that mean, you work backwards? How did you end up with that one being the last that you read?
I think that the creative process started with that one poem as an elegy. I thought, because you don't walk around and go, I'm going to write a book today. You don't, that doesn't happen. So what happened was, I'm going to write an elegy to my marriage. I wrote one poem and I'm like, I don't think I'm done yet. And then I work backwards. Because it's amazing. Like, sometimes you write a poem and you're like, I'm not done with this material yet. I think I'm going to write 5 different poems on this same thing. And that also happens. The same thing happens with visual artists as well. Sometimes they do many variations on a theme, right? Sometimes you're just not done with the material. So that was what I thought was going to be, okay, let's elegize this and put it to bed. And it ended up being, this is not put to bed. So that's
it was still itching, still itching you.
Yeah.
There's a question here from Dean Gordero. How long did this collection take to develop?
Well, I was married for 20 years. And then I wasn't. And then it took about 5 years after that, 4 to 5 years after that. That's about my pace. I write a book about every 5 to 7 years. That's about my pace. I'm slow. I am no Bruce Meyer, that's for sure, who has 60 books out. I'm like, I don't even know how he does that.
Micheline, it seems to me that one of the things that elevates this book is that, like, so often when bad things happen to us, we respond with a kind of bitterness, and we take our shame and we blame the people around us. But I don't think you've done that with this book. And to me, one of the things that makes it, I guess, kind of transcendent above the material is that you approach this dark stuff with a kindness and an empathy. I think you end up in this place of I don't know, kindness and empathy. Can you speak to that at all? Was that your intention, or did you just end up there?
No, it was definitely my intention, because I think that far too often I see people carrying the burdens of things around, like, like half-built canoes or something. They just carry the burdens of things around that have to do with shame or fear or blame. Like, it's really easy to point the finger and go, you fucker, you did that to me, you. But I didn't want to approach the collection in that way. I did not want to turn it on myself and blame me entirely either. I actually did that for quite a number of years and found that was really self-destructive. And what I determined was this thing comes from the we. We make the community of a couple. We make a marriage. We make the dysfunction. We make the function. We make the fun. We make it together. And that's the way that this needs to be addressed. And I do not hate my ex-husband. I think that he's an amazing person, an amazing father. And I won't turn that darkness anywhere but to the words and to the emotion that was filtered through me as a fallible, gullible, open-hearted, flawed human being.
Micheline, beautiful answer. We got some wonderful action on the chat here. Let me just say out loud, somebody asked, what does your present spouse think of this? And then Jeff wrote right below it, he loves it and her, with 3 exclamation points. So hear to that. We have time for just maybe one more question, or maybe we don't. Micheline, do you have any last words before we finish off here, Kyle and I?
I just want to again thank you. Like, what an open-hearted, generous, loving kindness for all of you to be here. I mean, Louise Half is reading tonight, and Ian Williams has got something fancy going on, and like, you're here. Thank you for being here for this production, for this book. I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. So thank you so much, Micheline. And I'm almost out here as well, but I just want to thank all of you for coming here. There's a lot of good reasons to not be on Zoom these days, but I really feel like my cup is full right now. And I think that's because of you, Micheline, and your book. So thank you to you and Shelf Life Books and University of Alberta and the readers, Tyler and Matt. Thanks again so much. Glass Bookshop, and thanks Micheline. Kyle, can we do the thing again? Can we let everybody yell something?
Absolutely.
So Micheline can hear it?
I will enable it. If you want to cheer, please unmute yourself, and you can do so now.
Go!
Hey.
Love you, Micheline.
Congratulations.
So thank you, everybody, and I'll pass it over to you now, Kyle.
All right. Thank you so much, John. That was a great cheer. I think that's the best one I've seen on Zoom so far. We had over 100 participants this evening. Like, that's such a wonderful turnout. Congratulations, Micheline, on the very successful event and the wonderful book. We do, as has been mentioned, have stacks of these here. Please do come on down and get your hands on them. Thanks to Matt and Tyler for reading, and of course to John for hosting, and to all of you for joining us this evening. Well, you have a lovely evening, and if you want to stick around and gab for a few minutes, I'll leave the meeting open, but I will turn off the recording now, so you're free to say all the nasty things you've been holding on to all night. I jest, of course. Well, thanks again, and good night.